Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Resolute Square Strategy Session. I'm Lisa Senecal, sitting in for Rick Wilson. Very happy to have you all here. Really happy to have both Joe Trippi, the legendary Democratic strategist, and we are thrilled to be joined tonight by Mark Jacob. Mark is a journalist, an author, the former editor at the Chicago Tribune and the Sun-Times. He has an incredible Substack newsletter called Stop the Presses. You need to subscribe to this, read it regularly. It breaks down how right-wing extremism exploits the weakness in American media, calls out a lot of the things that we try to talk about regularly. So, Mark, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for asking me.
Yeah, we're really thrilled. You have a steady stream of incredibly important pieces that you write. And I really do hope people will go to Substack and follow Stop the Presses. It's really important.
It's free too.
What's that?
It's free.
It's free too. Yes.
And it's great.
Yes.
And it's really worth the read, guys.
Yeah.
Check it out. You can
Stop
on
stopthepresses.news.
Yep.
Yep.
And
and
it's really worth it.
Also on there, you have great short conversations with Stephen Beschloss, who we've had on the show before, which are really valuable too. So, Mark, I want to start out kind of getting a framing of this whole issue from you as a former newspaper editor. Where were we when that was your job? Where are we now? And how the hell did this deteriorate so quickly?
Well, I left the Chicago Tribune, where I was Metro editor. That was my last job. It was just the biggest department in the biggest newsroom in the Midwest. And, Trump had taken power by then. He was president. Not like the kind of president he will be if he wins this time, because there wasn't that horrible Supreme Court ruling. But anyway, Trump was in. And, we were trying to figure out how to cover him. And one of my bosses told me, don't ever say he's a liar. Don't say he's lying. Just say what he says and then say what the truth is and let the readers figure it out, which I thought was, followed orders. But I thought that was just pretty terrible because, it just forces the readers to solve a puzzle. It's like Sudoku with politics, instead of just saying, Trump said incorrectly or Trump lied or whatever you want to say, just say flat out that what he did. And the overall problem, I have to say, Lisa, as far as summing up what's happened in the last 8 or 9 years, is that the news media has been just overwhelmed by the lies of the right. I mean, it has been something that they were just incapable of. And I know because, when I used to edit page one stories for the Chicago Tribune and from Washington, and I would make sure that we had kind of about equal quotes from the Republicans and Democrats. I would count the quotes in news stories just because I thought that would make it fair. Well, that didn't make it fair. I now realize that just equalizes things. Maybe the Republicans were telling the truth and Democrats weren't. Maybe, instead of being the kind of the guardians for truth, the news media were simply deciding to just share whatever was told to them. And the right wing figured that out really fast, especially, under Trump. He just knew that he could lie faster than anyone could fact check him, and that the news media overall would just put in its headlines, especially, but in the news stories too, whatever he said.
Yeah, that's pretty horrifying. Joe, you've been dealing with the media for a long time in campaigns. Do you get the sense that it's dramatically changed or you're still doing campaigns? So is it much different to deal with the media now than it was in some of your early campaigns?
Yeah. No, I mean, I now find myself when I go on, often I think feeling a lot like Joe Biden must have felt in the middle of that debate, where I'm sitting there and I'm dealing with somebody who is lying the entire time I'm on with them. And they're just treating it like he said this, and Joe, what are you saying? And it's a guy can go on and say the sky's made of water, and if I counter it, I just said it wasn't. He said it was, and again, let the voters decide. They just lie incessantly, and you sit there. I mean, there's some people I just won't even go if I know that that's who I'm being parked next to. I won't do it anymore. One of the things I've talked about is I think, and I think we should do something like a stop the liar or fire the liars hashtag. It seems to me, if you're a network in this country, you should be able to make one simple thing reality, that you're paying these contributors. When one of them lies on your air, they're fired. They can have opinions. They can say, oh, Donald Trump's the greatest president I ever saw, and he's done an amazing job. He cured COVID. Whatever. I mean, that's your opinion, but he didn't cure COVID. So, like, we know that you just told a lie. I mean, I understand some of it's subjective, but a lot of it's facts too. I mean,
Right.
that he's created more jobs in the history of the republic. When he lost jobs. I mean, it's just. I mean, so it would. You're fired. And these guys lose their $300,000 contributor contract or their $100,000 contributor contract. When they start losing those. And it would seem to me, yeah. You're a news channel, or you're becoming a little bit more of what. I don't know,
Yeah, but Joe,
Mark. What do you think? Yeah,
but CNN was doing worse than that. CNN was paying people to lie. In the early days of the Trump administration, when Trump was running, remember they used to have, in order to look balanced, they would pay
right.
people who were telling the Republican side, and they were lying a lot. And if they'd stopped lying and they started diverging from the kind of the official right-wing talking point, CNN would have fired them. It would have fired them if they told the truth.
Right.
It hired them because they were lying.
So in their heart of hearts, when either the personalities who are hosting the news programs or the people in the executive suite are thinking about how the media has conducted itself in the past 8 years, do they truly believe that, well, we were just, we were not weighing in one side or the other. We were just making sure that both sides haven't had an opportunity, and we weren't trying to put our foot on the scales? Or do they know? And is there any sense of accountability at all?
There's no, I don't think so. I think there's tremendous arrogance. And I think they also feel like that their job is to be fair to the Republicans and the Democrats, when that's not at all
Right.
what the job should be. It should be fair to the viewers and the readers. I mean, the consumers and to
Right.
the public. I mean, that's who they owe the truth to. They don't really owe, well, we're going to have, even Democrats saying things. I mean, this is something that's really lost, I think, in the whole discussion about the news media, is what the value added of journalism is. I mean, anyone, and you saw it at that CNN debate. They just, the anchors just sat there like they might as well have just been like cushions on the chairs. They just sat there and just let Trump lie and lie and lie, and Biden clearly struggle. And I guess they were assuming that Biden would be able to, to parry some of the lies of Trump, but nobody really can. I mean, because he's lying. You're lying so fast, you can't. Even if Biden had had a good night, he wouldn't have been able to get all the lies out. So they just sat there like cushions on chairs and just let it happen. That's not journalism. Journalism is value added. It's like it's taking what happened and saying, well, this is what happened last year at this time, or this is the bill that's slightly different from the bill from 3 years ago, or statistics show that this is becoming a bigger problem, and that's why this bill is needed. All kind of actual news, actual facts that you bring because of your experience and your expertise. It's really just not sitting there and letting politicians lie to your audience.
Yeah, there's
Well,
some
also, I
weird.
mean, the other thing is, okay, so Biden calls him out and says about this, they would still not corroborate or
Right.
validate
Right.
that was indeed a lie. So
His
it's
words.
just, again, another. Who do you want to believe? You guys all figure it out there in viewer
Right.
land,
Right.
because we're not going to. I mean, even if they did think or expect Biden to call it out, we all know if he had, that they still would have, okay, Biden said it was a lie. Trump
Right.
says this.
Who
That's what,
knows?
who
Who
knows? Yeah.
knows?
Yeah.
And journalism is not who knows. It's supposed to be, we checked it out and this is what the truth is,
Right.
or we checked it out and this might be true, but these are the facts behind it. And I've advocated that you should never put Trump on live. Never. Because you
Right.
cannot fact check him fast enough to get through it. He lies 3 times in one sentence. And I was watching Elise Stefanik on, on Meet the Press, and she does the same thing. And it's like, there's just no way. You might pick off one of the lies, but the other two just slide
But,
on through.
but this is
Right.
like a way that the audience, we could empower the audience to to fire the lie. In other words, as they're watching the news and they know that they're being told a lie, immediately start hashtagging that guy or
Right.
that guest or that contributor with "fire the liar."
Right.
And by the way, the same thing. Anytime a Democrat or Republican member of Congress or whatever is lying about to protect Trump or Biden, that's it, again. Forget about the partisan
Right.
side of this. Just
Right.
fire the liars. By the way, I suspect that there would be a lot more MAGA lying going on in terms of being called out because they tend to do that. And also, every time Trump goes on, if we had a couple million people hashtag fire the liar on anything he was saying, I mean, I just think we should. I mean, I think more in media than than I was thinking about in terms of the political impact on a party. But I still think you could actually engage the audience, empower them if we could create that kind of where they're the ones telling CNBC or MSNBC or CNN, that, like if they're getting in real time that the guy they have on the air right now has
Right.
just generated 200,000 fire the liar
Yep.
hashtags.
Well, that goes into something that I've been really pushing, which is that fact checking is not enough because the lies overwhelm the fact checking, and the fact checking sometimes is the debate they were fact checking on CNN
Right.
an hour later.
Hour after.
I mean,
Right.
give me a break. After everyone had gone to bed or turned to 2.5 Men or something, it's ridiculous. And so fact checking is not enough. We need fact crusading. The news media need to be so offended by the fact that these people are trying to lie to their audience that they confront them in real time on the air. And just kind of like what you were saying, Joe, is you need to have interviewers who will say, that's not true. And if you keep on saying that, we're going to end this interview. That's fact crusading. That's confronting the liars and not letting them get away with it, and also telling your audience that they're lying to them.
And even there was an interview a couple of days post debate with Burgum, who potentially is going to be the vice presidential pick from Trump. And when he was on one of these Sunday shows, he dismissed the lies not as lies, but he said Trump didn't say anything new. There wasn't anything that he said on that stage last night that he hasn't said before. This isn't news.
Right.
And he was allowed to get away with that. And as a reporter, to be sitting there and be told it's not news that the guy who's going to be the GOP nominee lied for an hour and a half.
Right.
Should just infuriate. And how do you not push back on that?
Well, that's another thing that I've really been kind of railing on is the idea that is this bright, shiny object thing that the news media is essentially shallow. And so if now that Trump has, lied about all this and he threatened to throw Hillary in jail. So now when he threatens to throw other people in jail or even execute a former general, retired general, I think it's just not that big news because, he's always been talking like that. And so the news media, they're always looking for some bright, shiny new object. They're very easily distracted. And the thing that is so astounding in this time is that the biggest story of any journalist's lifetime is going on right now. There's an attempt to overthrow democracy in the United States, which is, to overthrow the system that we've been under for 2.5 centuries. And it's right in front of us. It's a great story. It's important. It's super interesting. There are a lot of aspects of it, and the news media is bored with it. They'd much rather, look at some, what's the horse race on the vice presidential
Right.
pick, or so that's what I'm saying, is the news media is so shallow that it's so chasing after bright, shiny objects that they can't see the gigantic, incredibly important story that's right in front of them.
Yeah, no, I think there's like an incredible story, like, the old follow the money. I mean, what happened to follow the money? I mean, how is it that Tim Mellon is given $50 million to Donald Trump and $25 million to RFK Jr.'s super PAC? I mean, and not just him. I mean, if you actually start following the money and actually connecting the dots as part of that uncovering of the conspiracy to take the election and do the coup, and you can't get anybody to focus. I mean, we had that. When Lisa, you started, like, what's the difference? Like, well, there was a time in a couple of reporters who, by the way, at the time were not the star reporters at the Washington Post. They were, but they started, just digging and digging and digging. Mark's right. I mean, this is the most amazing story, waiting for somebody to, to any aspect of it, the money aspect.
Well,
I mean, any of it, and no one's doing it.
Well, and I would say no one's doing it. I want to really point out that, you look at ProPublica, which finally revealed all the corruption in the Supreme Court. But that was a story sitting there for decades. I mean, it was just sitting there waiting for somebody to do. And that's the thing. One of the big problems is that it's so much easier just to, put people on and stick a microphone in front of them and have them say things. That's way harder than going. I keep on saying, why wouldn't you go out and talk to people who have diabetes and are trying to, and what did it mean to them? There's a cap on insulin prices. What did it mean? How did it affect their lives? That's something that really affects people. But that means you have to get a crew out there. You got to get plane tickets. You got to go.
Money.
Right. It costs money. So much easier. It's also, not only does it cost money, but it's not a guaranteed, it's not a set piece. And news today loves set pieces. That's why you have the same people sitting in a studio all the time yakking. You don't have nearly enough reporters going out and finding stories.
It's also why they love Zoom, because now they don't even have to get you into the studio. They can just take you on your laptop. They don't have to pay for all that stuff.
Right.
So, it's just, there's just been a decline. But so ProPublica, in the past, somebody like that does such an incredible job of like unleashing the facts that have been buried for 10, 20, we're there. Normally, in the quote old days, I'm sorry, I'm dating myself, but in the old days, that would launch 10 different papers chasing that and chasing it down to the death now. Okay, we're on the scent. We're going to, some of that happened, but not the way, is that the fragmentation that's going on? I mean, or is it the money cost of doing that?
I think there are a few. Well, it's a plain old fact that there are a lot fewer reporters working in America today than there were 10 or 15 years ago. Yeah. But you also have the situation. Remember with that upside down flag that Mrs. Alito put up?
Yeah.
The Washington Post had that story and they didn't run it
for ages.
Remember, they had it. They had the story. They decided that it wasn't worth running. And it's
we used to. The degree that local journalism has collapsed, and we don't have the small hometown papers and people, the reporters being when they just had a July 4th break. Mm-hmm. They were back talking to constituents, and they lie. There are Republicans back home who are saying, one of the things I am most proud of in my term is I brought X amount of money back to this community to build this bridge or this road or, break ground on this project. And they voted against the infrastructure bill, but there's nobody there to push back. But even then, when they get back in DC, those questions can still be asked. Right. Because if I've seen the footage of something that happened in Wyoming then I know that the mainstream media had the ability to see it as well. But where are those questions when they're talking to people in the halls of Congress? Why aren't people pressed on these things anymore?
Lisa, I'm glad you bring up the local news thing, because that is maybe be even worse than the national situation with journalism. As far as newspapers just becoming kind of got what they call ghost newspapers, where there's like one person running everything, and it just means that you don't have oversight over government. It means that the kind of fact checking you're talking about doesn't happen. It's a real problem. And then you have situations, like Sinclair, and their chains, where, because the polls show that Americans have a significantly higher trust for local news than for national news. So when Sinclair gets its local local anchor, the same person who is warning you about the thunderstorm coming in, and has them intro some lying story, then it has a greater impact.
Right, reading off the same script that Sinclair
Right.
has given to 75 other also read. And
And now they went and bought the Baltimore Sun. I mean, they're their top money guy. I mean, it's just
Right.
this. And one of the things I keep saying is that the billionaire, and this is, they figured out early on to buy and create things like Sinclair, and then we rent. So Sinclair spews on, the anchor will introduce these stories that hit Biden, or or say we're spending whatever the hit is, the caravan coming. That's that like magic happens
Right.
whenever they need it, and we're renting, because in that local market, when we're paying for ads to say Joe Biden's a great president, he's done this, that, and the other, we're renting it. They own it. We're actually making them money,
Right.
and paying them to spew lies in a better place to do it, right in the middle of a newscast, instead of like an
right, where
obvious
you're
political
trusting.
ad. Yeah.
Well, I mean, more than half of local newspapers now are owned by private equity or
Yeah.
hedge funds, and those people, believe me, they do not care whether they are in business to produce good journalism 10 or 20 years from now. It's kind of this kind of quick hit philosophy, where they buy the newspaper, they lay off half the staff, they jack up the subscription, because a lot of folks, especially kind of older folks who've been reading a newspaper for a long time, they're not going to quit because it's part of their daily
Right.
habits. And they make a lot of money really fast. They're not thinking about 10 years from now. They don't really care if that place has a newspaper then. And so there's this horrible cynicism and lack of mission going on in local news that didn't used to be there.
Yeah, I have to give a shout out to where I live, because we still do have a local operation that has 5 or 6 small local papers. And part of the what creates that accountability is that I see the editor when I go to the grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
I bump into the reporter, and if there's something and I know the people who are going to be at the school board meeting covering it. And when you remove that, and you have a hedge fund that is phoning it in with, as you were saying, such a skeleton staff.
Right.
That, I mean, God love these people who are still trying to do the very best they can on these pitiful budgets that they have, with far too few people who are doing it. And you can only do so much with the resources when so much of it's being extracted,
Right.
because it's a for-profit,
Right.
big business now.
And as somebody who was in daily newspapers for 40 years, I know that when you're new in the business, it's much more easy to swallow lies. It's when you have somebody who's experienced and has been around the block a few times, they're more skeptical about politicians and everyone else, and they do a better job at ferreting out lies. And that's why, when you have these horrible budgets in newsrooms, and you're laying people off and you're cutting their salaries or whatever, the best people go away. And it's a real crisis in journalism right now is this kind of the loss of talent and the loss of
Yeah.
experience. And again, who takes advantage of that? The liars take advantage
Right.
of that. And
Yeah.
that's why this has been this great season for liars, for political liars. And they're loving it, and they're feasting on it.
Well,
And we just got to do more.
next week's going to be a great week for political liars because the GOP convention's going to be
Right.
happening. So I want to hear from both of you. We'll wrap up tonight talking about this. What is it that you want to see? What has to happen? Because this can't be treated like a regular political convention. That's not what this is. It's an authoritarian spectacle that they're going to be putting on. So what is the media's obligation as what journalism is supposed to be? What is their obligation to the American people? And is there any pressure we can put on them? But what would you want to see next week? First, Mark, and then Joe, please weigh in.
Well, I think they're going to fail. I mean, I think what they're going to do, because you're not going to have this instantaneous fact checking that you should have. I mean, I'd love to be surprised by it, but in the middle of some speech by whoever the vice presidential person is, or Trump or whoever, they're going to lie because that's what they do, and they're not. And I mean, it'd be great if there was like something to crawl across the bottom of the screen that said, "No, that's not true. That's not true," or if the anchors would interrupt them and whisper, "Well, that's not really true." They're not going to do that. It's just going to be a infomercial for insurrection in effect, and it's going to be terrible. What they ought to do, one of the new things that I've been suggesting and other people have been suggesting too, is they need to have experts on authoritarianism as part of the crew that they interview during it. There's part of the play-by-play commentary needs to be some of these really strong authoritarian experts, because that's what this is. You're right. This is, Lisa. This is going to be kind of it's a convention for people who want to overthrow democracy. That's what it is.
And they're all going to call themselves patriots.
Right.
Joe, what do you want to see next week?
I agree with Mark on the authoritarian experts. Networks would do a great service to have those kind of those kind of experts available and talking and calling out every time there's that there's something they can flag that, look, this is another example of how authoritarians cults move. And then I think, but I also think this may be a place now where I think trying to do the fire the liar thing. Again, same thing. Anytime somebody lies on that stage, we should be, again, not necessarily the networks this time, but I just think that's what is, we've got to call out the lies, and we got to do a better job, and we got to put pressure on those that do, and the networks to keep them off the air. But, and so, yeah, I think, next week's a great opportunity, but I agree with Mark. But what they're going to do is it's going to be wall to wall. Let somebody yap forever. Afterwards, they'll have their fact check guy like on at midnight, who will go through in 3 minutes the 5,322 lies like it's speed reading. It's like, and then he on live 38, 36, he said this, and ripping through it. And they, and then they think, hey, we did a great job. We just documented 328 lies that happened tonight, but no one saw it, and it happened. It's almost like a gimmick now when whoever, and there's some of them are really good fact checkers. I mean, the fact checker himself, or herself. But
I just wanted to say one more thing about the convention, which is, it's not about funny hats. It's not about people, it's not about pageantry. It's not the networks need to act like this could be the last Republican convention before a takeover of our government. And it's not normal. And they need to not treat it like it's a normal part of our political process. It's not.
But they also have to put it all on display. like at the Democratic convention they're going to be cornering every single delegate and saying, "Do you think he's mentally fit to be
Right.
president
Is
of
he
the United
right?
States?" Yeah. Are they going to really be on the floor of the Republican convention saying he was convicted of 34 felony counts,
Right. Right.
And is
convicted of
eventually fit to be running for?
yeah?
I
No,
mean,
this is my point. Yeah, this is my
Right.
point. There,
Or ask if
it's
he's
this.
unhinged. I mean, he says
right,
But
crazy stuff.
yeah,
right. He's
no, that's
talking
what
to
I'm saying.
charters
But
for
they're not going to be
electricity,
and by the way, if you interview them, some of them will be really unhinged people. I mean, that's what I'm trying to. I mean, it really
yeah,
show who and what this
Right.
is, and treat them the way they are going to treat the Democrats at that convention. That's what's so strange about this sort of this real double standard
right,
of the Democrats and Biden have some kind of higher bar because, like,
Right.
you guys are normal, therefore we can ask you, do you support, because they actually know, by the way, that there's a good chance a Democrat might say, "Yeah, I have questions after that debate."
yeah.
They know when
They're
they
gonna
ask.
make the
They
mistake of
know when
telling
they
the
ask.
truth.
Yeah, they know when they ask a Republican that they're going to go, what what convictions?
Right.
I didn't
Fake
see the
news.
verdict.
Right.
Yeah, fake news. And so which gets to it's not new news to get that. So but it ends up being I mean, just a total disservice. So I hope that's the one thing they do, but I don't think they'll do that either. So, we'll see.
Well, Mark, we have to have you back to talk more about this. We'll have to talk about what happens next week at the convention because it's so much bigger than a convention. There is nothing normal about what's happening right now, and I appreciate so much that you call it out in your newsletter. Stop the Presses. Everybody read Mark's writing.
Yep.
Watch the conversations that he has with Stephen Beschloss. It's really important. And what Joe is saying about calling this stuff out constantly, it's all of our responsibility to be doing that. We can't expect that the media is going to finally, after 8 years, come around and start doing this properly. It is the public, it's organizations like Resolute Square, it's folks like Mark. Everybody has to be doing this and calling out the lies when you hear them because we're the only ones who are going to be doing it, and our democracy's on the line.
Yep.
Everything's on the line this year.
Amen.
So thank you so much, Mark, for being here. Thank you, Joe, as always. Everybody, please follow Resolute Square and all the places that you follow things. Joe Trippi has the Trippi podcast. Make sure you subscribe to it. Listen to it every week. It is brilliant. Comes out on Fridays. The Lincoln Project podcast, Rick Wilson's Enemy List. Be back here every Tuesday to join us. And please do subscribe to Resolute Square. Take out a paid membership if you're able to do that. Your support is what keeps us here and doing the work, and the work matters. So thanks everybody for your support. Thanks again, Mark, for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks. Take care, everybody.